It was late. The house was still, the kind of still that only comes after a long day of noise and movement. I had been in the kitchen, cleaning up after dinner, mindlessly running the sponge over the same plate when I heard the footsteps. They were light, almost tentative, like he wasn't quite sure whether or not to disturb me. I turned toward the sound and saw him standing in the doorway, his silhouette barely visible in the soft light coming from the living room. "Mom?" His voice was low, hesitant, but there was something in it that made my heart flutter. Something I hadn't heard in a while. "Can we talk?" I wiped my hands on the towel, almost instinctively. He wasn't a kid anymore, but there was something about the way he said my name that still made me feel like I needed to be the one to take care of him. "Of course, sweetie. What's on your mind?" I asked, my voice softer than I expected it to. "B." He stepped into the kitchen, his eyes meeting mine briefly before he looked away, his hand running through his hair, a nervous habit I hadn't seen in years. "I don't know. I've just been thinking about things lately," he said, his words trailing off. He wasn't one for small talk. When he wanted to talk, he really wanted to talk. I set the plate down and leaned against the counter, crossing my arms, waiting for him to continue. My son was 24 now, home from college for a while, trying to figure out what he wanted to do with his life. He'd been quieter since his return, more distant in some ways, even though he was physically here in the same house. It was like there was this space between us, this distance I couldn't close no matter how hard I tried. "Yeah," I prompted gently. He hesitated for a moment, then looked at me again, his eyes soft but intense, like he was trying to find the right words. I miss you, Mom. I know things have been different." His voice faltered slightly, but there was something so raw, so vulnerable in his admission that it stopped me in my tracks. I didn't know how to respond at first. It had been a long time since I'd heard him say that. It felt like I was hearing it for the first time, even though he'd been saying it all his life. But now, with him standing there, so much older, so much more serious, it felt different. "I miss you too," I said quietly, more to myself than to him. The words left my mouth before I could stop them, but even as I said them, I realized how true they were. It had been years, hadn't it? Years since I had truly connected with him. Years since we had just sat down together and talked about everything and nothing at the same time. He took a step closer to me, and I could feel the weight of his presence. In the room, it was different now. I wasn't just his mother. I could feel that shift in the air, the shift in both of us. It was like we were two people, no longer bound by the roles we used to play, but by something else, something deeper, more complicated. "Do you ever feel like we're just going through the motions?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. It was a question I had asked myself many times, but hearing him say it out loud made the weight of it hit harder. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in a long while, I saw him as more than my son. I saw him as a man with his own thoughts, his own struggles, his own dreams. It made my chest tighten. "I do," I admitted, my voice shaky. "I've been so caught up in everything. I didn't realize how much I missed us, how much I missed you." He didn't say anything, but the look in his eyes was enough. It was enough to make me realize how long it had been since we had shared a moment like this. Just the two of us, without the noise of life, without the distractions. Just him and me, there was. A long pause, a silence between us that wasn't awkward but full of something unspoken. I didn't know what was happening between us, but it felt significant, like we were both standing at the edge of something. A turning point we weren't sure we were ready to cross. "You're still my mom," he said finally, his voice softer, the words carrying a weight they hadn't before. "And I think I just need to feel like you're still here. Not just physically, but, really here." He seemed to hesitate before continuing, his eyes searching mine. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I didn't know what to say. My mind was racing, my heart pounding in my chest, but I couldn't find the words. It was like he had opened a door when I hadn't known was there. He wasn't just talking about missing me as a mother, but as a person, as someone he needed, someone he wanted to understand him, to be present in his life again. I am here, I said quietly, my voice trembling slightly. I don't know what's been happening, but I'm here. I always have been. He nodded, his gaze never leaving mine, and I felt something shift in the room, something that told me we weren't just talking about the past anymore. We were talking about now, about the present, and maybe, just maybe, the future. But then, without warning, he did something that made my catch in my throat. He took another step closer to me, his hand slowly reaching out to rest on my shoulder, a touch so light, so delicate, that I almost couldn't believe it. The warmth of his hand on my skin sent a jolt through me, something I wasn't ready for. His touch lingered, and for a moment, neither of us moved. The world outside the kitchen seemed to disappear. It was just us. And that was all that mattered in that moment. I stared at his hand on my shoulder, my heart hammering in my chest. I didn't know what to do, didn't know what to say. But then he spoke again, his voice low and sincere. I've missed you, Mom, more than you know. I stood there for a moment, frozen in that unexpected silence, feeling the warmth of his hand still resting on my shoulder. His touch was gentle, but there was an intensity in it that I couldn't ignore. It was as if the air between us had thickened, charged with something unspoken, something that lingered just on the edge of what was safe to feel. I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry, and I realized how much I had missed him, too. My son, my little boy who once needed me for everything, and yet now seemed like a stranger in so many ways. He was a man now, standing there with the weight of adulthood in his eyes, and it terrified me. I wasn't ready for this shift, wasn't ready for him to be this. You're not just saying that, are you? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I wasn't sure if I wanted him to say yes or no. I wanted to believe it, of course, but there was a part of me that still wanted to hold onto the old version of him, the one who would crawl into my lap after a bad day and tell me all of his little worries. But that boy was gone now, and in his place stood a man who looked at me in a way I couldn't quite place. His hand lingered a moment longer before he slowly pulled it away, and I felt the absence of it more than I should have. No, he said, his voice steady, but his eyes searching mine as though he was trying to see something buried deep inside me. I mean it. I've missed you, Mom. I don't know how to explain it. I just ... feel like we've both been drifting apart, and I don't know how to stop it. I felt a sharp pang in my chest, a tightness that made it hard to breathe. He was right. I had felt it too, the distance that had quietly stretched between us over the years. It wasn't that anything dramatic had happened. There were no huge arguments, no betrayals. But somewhere along the way, I had lost him, I had lost us. And it hurt in a way that no amount of cleaning, cooking, or routine could fix. You don't have to explain, I said, my voice trembling just slightly. I feel it too, I just ... didn't know how to bridge the gap. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to steady myself. I've been so caught up in everything, in just ... surviving, you know? The housework, your father ... and you. I didn't know how to balance it all. And I think somewhere in all of that, I lost sight of you. He didn't say anything for a long time, just stood there, his eyes never leaving mine, as if he was trying to see the woman behind the mother. The one who had raised him, yes, but who also had a life and feelings of her own. There was something in his gaze, something soft, but also ... understanding. Mom, he said softly, taking a step back, but his eyes never wavered. You don't have to be perfect all the time. I don't need you to have everything figured out. I just want you. I want to talk to you. I want you to be real with me, like you used to be. His words hit me harder than I expected. It was like a dam breaking inside me, the flood of emotions I had buried under years of being strong, coming rushing to the surface. I had tried so hard to be everything for everyone, to fill all the roles, mother, wife, caretaker, that I hadn't stopped to think about what I needed. I hadn't stopped to think about what he needed either. I took a shaky breath, feeling the weight of his words settle in my chest. I don't know how to go back to that, I confessed, my voice barely audible. I don't know how to go back to being the way we were. He nodded slowly, his expression softening. We don't have to go back, Mom. We can start from here. Right now, something in me stirred, something deep and long forgotten. I didn't know if it was fear or relief, but it was there, creeping up from some corner of my heart that I had buried under years of routine. I hadn't realized how much I had missed him, missed the way we used to talk, the way he used to look at me like I was the most important person in his world. But now, in this moment, I saw it. I saw him, the man he had become, and it left me breathless. I'm sorry, I whispered, more to myself than to him. I don't know how to be what you need. You already are, he said softly. You're here. That's enough. He took a step closer again, this time placing a gentle hand on my arm, his touch so light it almost didn't feel real, but it was. It was real, and it made my heart beat faster, made my breath catch in my throat. Sometimes I wish I could just ... Have more time, I said, my voice breaking slightly. More time to be with you, more time to figure all of this out. We have time now, he replied, his voice firm but gentle, like a promise. Right now, we have this moment. And that's all we need. The air between us shifted again, and this time, it wasn't uncomfortable, it wasn't awkward. It was something else, something new. I could feel it, the subtle shift in the dynamic between us, the subtle pull toward something deeper, something we couldn't quite name. I didn't know where this would go, didn't know what would come of it. But in that moment, with my son, standing there, looking at me like he saw me for the first time in years, I felt a spark of hope. A hope that maybe we weren't too far gone, that maybe we could rebuild. Maybe we could still find our way back to each other, one conversation at a time. And as I looked into his eyes, I realized something. I didn't need to have it all figured out. I just needed to show up. And for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to do that. For him. For me. I spent the next few hours trying to go about my day, but every movement felt heavier than usual. The house was so quiet, almost too quiet, except for the occasional rustle of the leaves outside, swaying in the gentle wind. It was a familiar kind of quiet, the kind I'd grown accustomed to after so many years, but today it was different. It felt too still, like something was waiting to break the surface. I kept replaying our conversation in my mind, the way his words had hung in the air between us, charged with emotion. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. It wasn't just that we had spoken about it, about the distance between us, the ache we both felt. It was the way he had looked at me. For the first time in a long time, I saw something in his eyes that wasn't just love or concern for his mother. There was something more, something I couldn't name, and it made my chest tighten every time I thought about it. I had just finished tidying up the kitchen when I heard the soft sound of footsteps behind me. I turned, half expecting to find him standing there, but it was just the sound of the house settling. I tried to shake the feeling, but it was still there, lingering. Clock on the wall ticked louder than usual. I glanced at it. 4:22 p.m., I felt a sudden impulse to reach out and call him, to ask if he wanted to talk some more. Maybe we could sit down and have a real conversation, just the two of us, like we used to, before everything got complicated. But the words didn't come. I couldn't find the courage to say them out loud. Instead, I busied myself with something meaningless, wiping the counters again for the second time. Then, as though by some unspoken cue, he walked into the kitchen. His presence filled the room, not in the usual way a son might enter a space, but with a quiet, steady energy that I hadn't felt before. He looked different. He wasn't wearing the same old college sweatshirt or jeans. No, today, he was dressed simply, but with a maturity that almost made me stop in my tracks. A gray t-shirt, sleeves slightly rolled up to show his lean arms, paired with worn-in jeans and sneakers. But it wasn't the clothes. It was the way he moved. The way he carried himself now, like a man, not the boy I remembered. "Hey," he said softly, his voice low, almost hesitant. There was something in it that made my heart skip. "You okay?" I turned around, wiping my hands on the dish towel. The moment our eyes met, I saw it again, the same look. That gaze that lingered, studying me like he was seeing me in a way he hadn't before. And it made me feel exposed, vulnerable, in a way I wasn't ready for. "Yeah," I replied, my voice cracking slightly, betraying me. "I'm fine, just ... thinking." He nodded, stepping closer, but not too close. Not yet. He seemed to be giving me space, respecting the invisible boundary I had put up without realizing it. And yet, there was still an intimacy between us, a quiet understanding, like we were both dancing around the same unspoken truth. "About what?" he asked, leaning slightly against the counter, his eyes soft but searching. I hesitated, not knowing what to say. What could I say? How could I explain the whirlwind of emotions I'd been feeling? The guilt, the confusion, the longing. How could I put into words the way he made me feel both protective and afraid at the same time? Just, "US," I finally sighed, my voice barely above a whisper. "How we've changed. How we've drifted, and how I don't know how to fix it." There it was, the truth I had been hiding even from myself. I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know how to get back the way we used to be. I wasn't sure I could. And the thought of losing what we had left, losing us, made my stomach turn. He stepped closer, just a fraction, but it was enough. His presence was calming, and yet it stirred something deep inside me. Something that had been dormant for so long, buried beneath the surface of my responsibilities and my daily routines. I hadn't realized how much I had missed just being near him, his quiet confidence. His easy smile, the way he used to laugh at the simplest things. "You don't have to fix anything," he said, his voice warm, his tone soft, like he was trying to reassure me. "You don't have to have all the answers." I just ... I just want you to know I'm here. I've always been here. And I'm not going anywhere. His words should have been comforting, and in some way they were. But they also left me feeling more exposed than ever before. I could feel the vulnerability in him too, and it terrified me. It terrified me because it was real. And it reminded me that I was no longer just his mother, the one who had all the answers, who could fix everything with a smile or a hug. No, now, I was just a woman standing in front of her son, and there was so much more between us than I was prepared for. I looked away, trying to gather myself. I couldn't let him see how much his words had affected me, how much everything had changed in that one simple moment. "You don't have to worry about me," I said, a little too quickly. "I'll figure it out. I always do." But as the words left my mouth, I knew they weren't true. I wasn't sure I could figure it out. I wasn't sure I could figure him out. And that terrified me more than anything. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there watching me with those eyes that saw too much. And then in the quietest voice, he spoke again, his words like a whisper carried by the wind. I just want you to be okay, he said, his hand reaching out, stopping just short of touching mine. I don't want to lose you, Mom. The simple sincerity in his words broke something inside me. I felt tears prick the back of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here, not now. I wasn't ready to let him see how much I was crumbling, how much I had been holding on to the image of a perfect mother, a perfect life, when everything was slowly falling apart. I'm here, I whispered, turning back to him, my voice breaking as I spoke. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere either. For a long moment, we just stood there, not moving, not speaking, letting the silence settle around us. It was different. Now, the air felt thick with something unspoken, something neither of us could name, but something we both needed. And as I looked at him, really looked at him, I realized something. This wasn't just about fixing a relationship. It wasn't about going back to the way things were. It was about moving forward together with all the mess and the pain and the beauty that came with it. Maybe we don't have to fix everything, I said quietly, more to myself than to him. Maybe we just have to start over. He gave a small smile, one that held so much more meaning than words could convey. Yeah, he said softly. I think that's what we need too. The days that followed felt like I was walking through a fog. Everything around me seemed ordinary, but nothing felt the same. I found myself looking at Dylan with a mixture of awe and confusion, like I was seeing him for the first time again. It wasn't just his appearance that had changed, though he had certainly grown more mature. It was his presence, how he filled the space around him with such quiet strength, such awareness. It wasn't lost on me that we had crossed some invisible line. We hadn't talked about it directly, not in so many words, but the unspoken understanding between us was enough. Things were different now, and I could feel it in the way we moved around each other more cautiously, more intentionally. I'd gone back to my routine. The laundry, the cooking, the small daily tasks that used to fill my time so completely. But there was a hollow feeling to it now, as though I was simply going through the motions, unable to lose myself in them the way I once had. I caught myself staring out the window, my thoughts drifting back to that conversation we had when Dylan told me he missed me, when he reminded me that he saw me. It was that phrase that kept echoing in my mind. I see you. I didn't know how to take it. Part of me was grateful, relieved even. How long had it been since someone had truly seen me? Since someone looked at me and saw more than just the role I played, more than just the mother, the wife, the caretaker. But the other part of me was afraid that I was seeing something in him that shouldn't be there. Afraid that he was seeing something in me that shouldn't be felt. By the time evening arrived, the house had settled back into its usual rhythm, but it felt different. The air felt heavier, charged with an unspoken tension. Dylan was in the living room, watching something on the television, the low hum of the sound filling the space. I had planned to start dinner, but I found myself standing in the doorway, watching him, unsure of what to do next. My heart seemed to beat louder. In my chest, I caught his eye, and the moment our gazes met, I felt a shift again. He was watching me too, not with casual indifference, but with that same look, the one that had made me feel exposed, yet seen. And I couldn't look away. For a brief moment, neither of us moved, neither of us spoke. It was as if time stood still, just for a heartbeat. Then he stood up slowly, and I couldn't help but notice how differently he moved now. The boy I had raised was still there, but he was fading. The man he had become was stepping forward, taking his place. "Mom," he said, his voice softer than usual, a tone that made my chest tighten. "Can we talk?" I nodded, my throat suddenly tight. I didn't trust my voice to speak. Instead, I stepped into the living room, crossing the small space between us. He sat back down on the couch, patting the spot next to him, an invitation. I hesitated for a moment before joining him, unsure of the space between us, unsure of where I stood. Silence hung between us, heavier than it had ever been before. I could feel the weight of the moment, the depth of what had been said, and what had yet to be said. I wasn't sure where to start, but I knew we couldn't go on pretending that things were the same. Not anymore. I just wanted to make sure. "You're okay," he said, his voice quiet but insistent. "I've been thinking about what we talked about. I don't want you to feel like you're carrying everything by yourself." I closed my eyes for a moment, taking in his words. My chest tightened again, and I struggled to breathe through the emotion that threatened to overwhelm me. I had spent so many years keeping everything together, holding on to the pieces of myself that I thought I could control. But in that moment, I realized I didn't have to do it alone anymore. "I don't know if I've ever really been okay," I said softly, my voice barely a whisper. I didn't want to say it, but I couldn't stop the words. "I think I've been pretending for a long time." He didn't speak right away. He just sat there, watching me, his presence steady and unwavering. There was no judgment in his eyes, no pity, just an understanding that went deeper than anything I could explain. "I see you." "Mom," he said again, this time with more certainty, more warmth in his voice. "I don't want you to feel like you have to hide everything. You don't have to do it alone." His words broke something inside me. I felt the tears threaten again, but I pushed them back. I wasn't ready to let him see me fall apart, not like this. Not now, but as I looked at him, really looked at him, I knew that it was time. Time to stop pretending, time to stop carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders, time to let myself be for once. "I don't know what to do with all of this," I whispered, more to myself than to him. "I don't know what to do with how I feel." He reached out, just a small gesture, but enough to stop me. He didn't touch me. He didn't need to. His hand was simply there, an unspoken offer of support. And in that moment, I didn't need any more than that. I didn't need answers. I just needed to know that it was okay to feel. "It's okay," he said, his voice soothing. "You don't have to have all the answers. We'll figure it out together." I nodded, and for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, everything would be okay. As we sat there in the soft light of the living room, the weight of the day finally started to lift. The silence wasn't awkward anymore. It was comfortable, a space where we didn't have to fill the gaps with words. We just existed together in that moment, with the knowledge that things had changed. And that was okay. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel alone.